Yes. A DDoS attack is an attack where a nefarious actor uses a host of various computers. They can be all on a single network, they can be all across various networks, but uses a lot of different computers to deny a target of legitimate services. So they can do it through a variety of ways, flooding them with pings, trying to load a site. You have 1,000 computers all constantly loading and refreshing a site. Can slow down traffic if it's a small mom and pop business, if it's a big corporation, right? It can be trying to set up connections that never really follow through. So the computer has a whole bunch of hung connections, and it's taking up bandwidth, and it's taking up time and space and computing power in order for it to try and hold all this, and then it slows down the service for everyone else. It can sometimes shut down stuff entirely. Essentially make web pages unusable. Think of, for instance, when someone's trying to buy a ticket for a big ball game or a big concert coming to town. You know, Justin Bieber's new special. He's in Denver, Colorado, and everyone loads up the site, and immediately the site crashes, and no one can buy it. So everyone waits 5 minutes, and they load it up again, and the site crashes, and no one can buy it and stuff. So that's kind of what it is. It can be accidental, it can be on purpose, but a DDoS attack is a distributed network where a lot of computers are targeting one computer or one system or one server, and they're denying legitimate user activity for that service, for that product that is hosted on it. DDoS is a huge concern, especially in the cybersecurity industry for the military, because it impacts foreign affairs, it impacts private industry, it impacts national security of a variety of kinds. We need to, as the military, as the government, have a constant uptime of all of our systems and services. Any one of them goes down, it's a huge disaster, because there's so many moving parts and so many pieces, so many organizations that need to all be communicating with one another, and there's hundreds of different laws and thousands of different systems where we all, add bits and pieces in. So if any of it shuts down, that's a huge artery that's clamped or clogged, and we've got to find workarounds. And bureaucracy moves pretty slow. So the highways that we have for information right now, they work pretty well. It's very important to keep them up and running, so we don't have to run through or wade through paper and email from bureaucratic politician to bureaucratic politician to get the go ahead to do something else, to open up a new channel of communication. It just wouldn't function. Government wouldn't function. Military wouldn't function if we were susceptible to DDoS attacks. There have been a few times where I've encountered a DDoS threat, and usually what we do is we just ask people to hold back on using certain services and wait for the attack to go down. Being the government, it runs pretty much 24/7, and though it might make people a little bit angry to have to stay an hour or two or 12 after in the office to get something done, it's what we do. And so a DDoS, it just happens. It's part of the job. So you just have to learn to live with it. And sometimes that means you can't access the system for an hour. Just gotta work without it for a bit. But come back in a little bit later. They can't run forever. It'll be back on, or it gives someone enough time to find a workaround, as slow as it may be, as annoying as it may be, as tedious as it may be. The workarounds can be found, and that's what you got to use. So usually, if we encounter something, it's just, hey, hurry up and wait. We got to get this done, and we'll be here. We'll be here long after the attackers get tired. So it just becomes a waiting game in a lot of instances. That's how we handle it. Yes, my organization has suffered a DDoS attack and an incident that was very funny to me was it wasn't even a nefarious actor or a state organization. It was our own guys. A lot of people had hit a station because they had just been there. They just gotten there, and so all of these men, all of these sailors and marines and airmen and army, they all get there and they all use uh, the the installation Wi-Fi and computer connections. And so everyone, they get there, they want to tell their mom and dad how they're doing. They want to call their girlfriend, their wife, their kids, their friends. They want to check their Facebook. They want to check and make sure that thing on eBay sold for them. So everyone logs into a computer somewhere, somehow, some way, and it just slows all communication from that installation to a near halt, and critical data couldn't get through. So, again, I tell you, the very slow, the very obnoxious and tedious ways. Someone up high in the office that I was working at calls on a sat phone to the office over there that another guy was working at, and tells him, "Hey, man, what's going on with these reports? What's going on with this information? We were supposed to get this hours ago. What's going on?" And the guy goes, "Yeah, man, I don't know what it is. Everything's been running so slow. Our servers aren't picking up certain information. We're not getting certain data the way that it should. We don't know how it's happening. Our IT crowd can't figure it out. They're saying that, they're getting so much traffic from just people, checking regular stuff that they can't parse through it, enough, or really like figure out uh, if there's any like downtime that they can send stuff through. So a lot of talking goes on. They shut down recreational use of base computers for a bit until we can get the necessary data out, and then they give people back their accesses to the installation, and then it's slow and it doesn't matter, and no one cares. Facebook pages take 5 minutes to load, but we don't care anymore because our job has been fulfilled. We did the necessary work so that way people could have their fun. Um, and yeah, again, that was just, hey, do you mind waiting? Do you mind not flooding our network, please? So that way we can get this out. A lot of times it can really just be avoided by just holding off, just not throttling your own connection, or if someone is throttling it on the other side, just say, all right, maybe not right now, but in a minute. Typical impact of a DDoS attack is just I hate to say it, but what the military does with it. Um, Usually, DDoS is to cripple some kind of communication or some kind of service, and it often does that. It slows down working hours, it slows down manpower, it slows down your availability to use the interconnected superhighway of the internet to do anything. Um, and it means that, if you've got a limited window to get stuff done, you lose that window. If you've got a time sensitive report or an email or job interview that you got to get to and you're hit with a DDoS attack, you're out. Now, maybe you can unplug your system, plug it back in, change your IPs, try to reroute stuff, or set up, some kind of buffer that can handle these kinds of exceptions. But if you're not tech savvy, you don't have an IT, set of staff on hand, it's just gonna slow you down. It's just gonna slow you down or stop you entirely. And that can be really devastating if it's like a bank or financial institution, like a credit union. If I don't get my money on the first, I don't have rent. So if they DDoS, Navy Federal, I say they, just anyone. If anyone DDoSes Navy Federal and I don't get paid, I don't pay rent, and so so many other people won't be able to pay rent, until this can get worked out. And so yeah, it really just is slowing down progress, slowing down or stopping time critical assets from being used, and that's just never ideal in any situation. Yeah, there are different ways to test it. Backup in the area where I used to work, there was a specific group of people that we would send like reports and that kind of stuff to, and they would handle a lot of the rules and regulations for how everything had to go. They handled all the incidents of compliance and non-compliance, and that went from software to hardware. Um, there was a lot of bloat on systems that I saw, but all of it was necessary for them for stuff to run and be monitored appropriately. Uh, so they would have certain computers, certain lab equipment that did have huge bandwidth capabilities or the ability to segment itself as multiple computers. And with multiple different cables, multiple different access points and like wires, and so you could get multiple different users on like the same system and the same physical system. You get multiple virtual users or logical users to attack whatever service that we were running. Annual attacks like that would go on, annual training, annual servicing. And so then when we would figure out something that would work, something that was designed to handle what we would consider a modest flood of network traffic, we would then make that the norm. We would go, yes, this works, this for this purpose, this computer, this server, this front facing entity, this can handle this like X level of flood. It can handle a few hundred logins. It can handle a few thousand connections at a time. Tens of thousands if it was a huge server handled by the DISA. But that was it. You just needed to have millions of dollars in hardware, or you needed to have some really fancy software run tests logically and physically on what your system could handle. And then when you figured out what was a reasonable model to build a network off of, you make that the standard, you give that the stamp of approval, and you cut no corners and you make no adjustments to it unless they are better hardware, better buffering, more restrictive routing rules, quicker timeout sessions. I know some systems are like a minute, some systems are 5 minutes, some systems are like 30 seconds. Like, hey, if your hand is not on that mouse and you are not actively clicking on something, you will get booted. So that was how we did it. Both managing just time in, how much time you could have in, as well as I remember more recently, even there was a timeout for any level of computer activity you could use. It would ask you to close your session if you needed to re-up it. Of course, you could always re-up it, but it would force shut down your session. So any tracking or any footprinting that could be done with your session was immediately lost as you had to grab a new one. So that would prevent people from, well, fingerprinting what system you were using exactly, and being able to DDoS a core of it, or be able to DDoS your traffic specifically, your system specifically, and stop you from doing your job. So that was very neat. A lot of different ways, but yeah, it started with testing it, setting up the requirement that all systems had to follow, and then making sure those systems were rigorously implemented, rigorously followed in all installations where they were applicable. So that's how we did it.